Hi, welcome to the Influence Women podcast. I'm your host, Kathleen Cooke, and I'm excited today to be welcoming the United Kingdom artist, Julie Ann Scott. You don't want to miss this one as she shares with you today how she listens to God, follows His promptings, and creates art that resonates and is successful in our culture today. Don't miss this one. We're thrilled to have you with us today with a very special woman who I met at Windsor Castle about a year ago, a beautiful artist, Julie Ann Scott. Julie Ann is an amazing professional artist. She's worked as an artist for over 20 years. She's married and lives in Dorset, UK, with her husband, Damian. Her oil paintings have been exhibited worldwide, and she paints amazing images um, globally for audiences and prophetically. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about that. She was asked to paint the main stage image in 2025 for the National U.S. Day of Prayer. She was commissioned by the Coptic Archbishop of London to produce paintings for the 10th anniversary of the execution of 21 Coptic Christian martyrs, if you remember that story several years ago. Her exhibition of 9 oil paintings depicting the Second World War called Stand has been on exhibition throughout the UK, including Windsor Castle and the UK Parliament. She has an additional book called Stand that goes in depth for each of these paintings. So you may want to explore that, and we can talk about how you can get a copy of that in the interview. So stay tuned on that. If you want to learn more about Julie Ann, visit her website at julieannscott.com. So, welcome, Julie Ann, to the Influence Women podcast. So great to have you
Hello.
with us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kathleen, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and
Pleasure.
don't we all love to listen to your English accent? We're going to just be in that beautiful verbal mindset of listening to your accent, your English accent. But tell us, I mean, we met at Windsor Castle about a year ago when I spoke there. We were both invited to speak at a very special event, and we just connected. And I think because we're artists, we connect.
Yes.
But tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more. I just kind of breezed through your bio a little bit, very briefly. But tell us a little bit about your personal journey with faith and how you began as an artist. Can you just share for just a few minutes about that?
Yes. So I was brought up in a Christian home, but then at 18, I was suddenly told by my mother that my father wasn't my real father. So at 18, that was quite a serious thing. I kind of went from being a Christian, a lovely Christian family, to being this orphan. I felt very orphaned. And she'd had an affair, so it was very difficult for me. I was like, what? So I then went on a kibbutz, and but before I went on a kibbutz in Israel, I went and found him. And funnily enough, he actually worked on Capitol Hill. He's Irish and he was a hairdresser and he worked on the basement at Capitol Hill. So I found him, I went to meet him, and then I went on a kibbutz. Then I stayed in Israel, and I never returned to art. I was going to study it. I was going to study at uni, but actually all of this just sent me, in a very different direction. I felt like I lost my faith. I felt like God had abandoned me. My father figure wasn't my real father. He wasn't my real father, but who was my father? So yeah, it was a really hard time. I then nearly married a Jewish man. I became a model in Israel and met him on set of a film, it's, Agatha Christie, with all these very famous people. And then, yeah, I just had to decide, am I willing to renounce Jesus in front of a rabbi? Because that was what was required of me. And it was at that point I was like, okay, probably I should really find out if God's real. So I went back to England to my auntie's in the middle of Yorkshire and I fasted for 4 days. She fasted with me. And on the fourth day, the Lord really showed me that I had not forgiven my parents and that this was my greatest sin. And it was what was separating me from understanding and knowing Him fully. So that was at the point at which I then went back to Israel, said I couldn't marry him. And then yeah, then my journey took me, the Lord showed me to join an American drama company. So I toured America, toured California for a year and a half in a Christian drama company. And then I came back to England, met my husband, had two children. And when I was 40, finally, I picked up a brush and I knew that God was telling me to paint. And he basically gave me, through miraculous means, he gave me the the biggest agent in Britain, the biggest fine art agent in Britain, wanted to represent me. And so I was with that agency for 10 years, and I produced probably about 2,000 paintings in that 10 years because had a lot of galleries, a lot of cruise ship galleries. So I became very good at painting very fast. And I produced about between 12 and 18 a month, and for all their, galleries. And during that time, I really, I taught myself really how to paint. I'm dyslexic, so I wasn't looking at books. I was very much kind of teaching myself just painting and I would listen to the Lord and really just worship him as I was doing it. And I remember just crying all the time uh, through that period. And then one day I produced something great. And so that was the beginning of me having a career. And it was very much from the Lord that that happened. And then as time went on, I basically I taught myself how to paint and I didn't look at any books or anything. And I really did believe that the Lord wanted me to use my art to convey his love to the world. That was my deepest prayer. And after painting um, for about a year, no, yeah, it's about a year every single day. And I produced this piece of art, and that was the piece of art that the agents wanted. That was the moment at which they were like, "That's it." And it was the spinning shoal, and it was the one thing that actually I'd done and said, "Lord, just give me something that's gonna, give me a career." And I started doing this circle, and all these fish started coming, and now it's like that image is actually for the chosen, but I did it 20 years ago. It was really interesting how that connects. But everyone was going, "Oh, did you take it from the chosen?" I'm like, "No, God gave it me a long, long time ago, and it was get what gave me my agents." So yeah, so that's kind of where I was. And then at COVID, I decided to come out of contract. I'd worked very, very hard. I'd learned how to paint very fast, which had given me this ability to be able to paint prophetically and to paint within a service, within a conference, within fundraising. And so that was where I felt that that's where the Lord was leading me into more prophetic and ministry. And that transition between professional artist for 15 years into ministry has been a very interesting thing because the Lord in 2016 began to speak to me. And I was thinking about the Queen, and I said to the Lord, "Why am I thinking about the Queen so much? I'm not royalist." And then the next day, I got an email from Windsor Castle inviting me to paint at Windsor Castle, and the painting would go into the Queen's private collection. And I knew God was speaking to me. And he gave me a vision of what he wanted me to paint. And then it was this tower with the sun on the right and the tower on the left. And he said, "I want you to call the painting, and of his government and peace there shall be no end. And I want you to paint dark clouds and the sun hitting this." So I went to do that. And the only place that I'd never been to Windsor Castle, so I didn't know what Windsor Castle really looked like. But the only place that there was a tower and there was a garden, and there was the sun on the right, the tower on the left was this place called the Moat Gardens. So I went into that garden, and as time went on, that there were so many miracles that surrounded this story, so many confirmations. I'm just really skipping over it. But the confirmation that God was commissioning me to do something, and that was the first time. And I didn't win the competition. But what did happen was the superintendent of Windsor Castle wanted to buy that painting. And I wrote, God told me they're going to invite you in the castle. And they did. And we stayed in the castle, had a private tour of the castle at night. But the Lord said, I want you to write a letter for the Queen. So I did that. And that painting and that letter has been in Windsor Castle now for 9 years. It's still there. And of
Wow.
course, when the Queen died, um, that was a moment where I was like, Lord, what were you doing? But when I'd come back from Windsor Castle, God said to me, I'm not done yet. I want you now to paint an exhibition on World War II and the miracles within World War II. And he said, there's going to be a huge storm. This was 2007, January 2017. He said, there's going to be a huge storm that's coming, and we are going to have to turn to him again, as King George VI called the nation to prayer 7 times during World War II. Now, this was a process for me. He didn't say it all at once like that. It was a gradual thing, and he began to build upon what he'd said, and then he said more, and then he gave me more verses, and people were posting things, people were sending me DVDs. It was just the most incredible year and a half of God relentlessly being this chatterbox, giving me so many miracles. I was thinking, I feel like I'm in the Bible. This must be really important. And of course, as time went on, the Queen died, and I'd waited like 7 years at that point, and then she died, and I'm like, Lord, what are you playing at? Why did you ask me to paint these? And these paintings were under a blanket in my studio for 6 years, 6 or 7 years. But God promised me that they'd go out into the world, that they'd be seen by important people, that the royals would use them to call the nation to prayer. God said all these miraculous things, and I had no evidence of it. So this was a walking in faith and not by sight. And
Mm.
he refined me. He knocked off my edges. He humbled me. He relentlessly spoke to me in such a way that I knew that I had to become holier. I had to give up this. I had to give up that. I had to seek him with all my heart. I had to rely on him. I had to trust that what he said and his promises were actually going to happen. And I've journaled it. I've got like 4 A4 books on this. I could write a book on how he spoke to me and what he did and how he did it. Just there were so many things that I could talk for hours about it. But so being invited back to Windsor Castle was for me the Met was an incredible miracle that God had suddenly out of nowhere comes. She leads, and they're like, my name was passed to Liz Doyle, and she said, I'd like to speak to you. So I told her my story, and she said, come, bring the paintings, which were actually for the Queen. And when the Queen died, the Lord said, you were right, because I sought him, desperately sought him, saying, why have you done this? Why have you made me paint all this for the Queen? And she's not even seen them. And the Lord said to me, you were right, because I heard every prayer that she prayed for this nation and for her family. So you did paint them for the Queen. And that's why I told you to paint them for her.
Mm. What a beautiful story.
So now those paintings, those stand paintings, called stand because that's what they are, they're basically how do we stand in a time of war? And of course, COVID happened. All of this, all of the turmoil that's happening in the world, I've watched. I mean, there wasn't even the Crown series, there wasn't the Dunkirk movie, there wasn't the Darkest Hour about Churchill. None of that had come out. I watched it all unfold in my journey that was between me and the Lord, just me and him. And so I cleaved to him in such a way that I became very ready. And every year I thought, this is the year it's going to happen. I'm ready. And it never happened. And it was like that the whole time. So now, um, yeah, so Stand has toured. It's gone to maybe 13 locations, Westminster being one of them, Windsor Castle. They also went to the ARC conference at the Excel in London, where all these like 4,000 world leaders were coming. And this is God, all of it.
Julie, I would just really believe that we are to stand right now, aren't we?
We
And
are.
and that what you painted prophetically that God asked you to paint is resonating not just from what we remember all of the events that happened during World War II. And certainly here in the United States, we study in our schools World War II, World War I. We study all these wars. We've seen those movies that you mentioned. We've seen the art and the documentaries, all of the things. I mean, we
Mm,
continue to watch them here on many different platforms uh, in the United States. So we're well
mm,
aware of what happened during World War II. But what I think is so prophetic about this is that God is using those images and using what we've learned from the history of World War II to teach us today how we're supposed to stand in our culture, in our world today, not just from a physical point of view, but from a spiritual point of view as well. As
yes.
artists, I've worked in Hollywood for many years, worked in media and entertainment, been an actress, and worked in the industry and dealt with the challenges of being a Christian within a very secular, anti-biblical
Yeah.
culture and having to
Mm,
stand for what I believe is it has always been very much a challenge, and it continues now to be even more so for artists, for writers, producers, directors in the industry, and all artists in what we're being asked to use our skills and talents for to share our biblical foundation, our biblical worldview, or to depart from it. Uh, in many ways, we're being asked to use our skills and talents to uplift and promote anti-biblical viewpoints that we as artists don't want to do. And yet, financially, it becomes a strain. And so we're being asked to stand, aren't we? We're being asked to
we
stand. And I would really continue to challenge and to share with our viewers today to get your book, Stand, to go to juliescott.com and juliannescott.com, rather, to get your book on Stand and look at those images that you've depicted. They aren't just about World War II, but we're going to be asked to stand in the future for a lot more bigger wars and stronger wars. And getting those visual images in our on our eyes is so keen and so important. We are a visual culture
mm,
today. Our eyes are focused on our screens, and we rely on our screens to bring us understanding and wisdom. I'm looking right now at you and I'm seeing that beautiful image behind you. It's the image that I believe you painted for this last 2025 National Day of Prayer. Can you share
yes.
with us for a moment, how you continue? And I'm going to also just go back a little bit too on your story that I love, in that God called you and as an artist into the industry at a very late age. You weren't in your 20s, you were in your 40s. And so often we think as women, we're done. God, I should have done this and I should have done that, and it's over with me now as an artist. It's never
Mm,
too late with God. And we have a calling in our lives. And when we are not obedient to that calling, then we lose out. And our culture and our world loses out. God loses out. And
mm,
so this image behind you is so prophetic in what you were asked to paint. You put the paintbrushes aside from gaining financially from a just painting images and painting paintings that you could make money at, to painting what God has called you to paint. And I think that we as artists are going to have to lay down our talents and skills in the
mm,
secular community and financially sometimes in order to do and be obedient to what God is calling us to do for his kingdom purposes, even though it may be challenging, even though financially we may not be gaining it, or from an influential point of view in the areas that we want to gain in, we have to give that control over to God and allow him to take control in all areas of our lives. So share with us just a little bit about that battle scene that I see behind you that you've painted for this National Day of Prayer this last year.
yes. So this is a 5 foot, 4 4 4 foot by 5 foot oil and mixed media. And when I was commissioned by the CEO or president of the National Day of Prayer, Kathy Bransell, she basically gave me the theme of hope. And she had had this incredible dream, and it was full of lots and lots of images, and I was quite overwhelmed, as you can imagine, being asked to paint something. I knew it was the next commission that God wanted me to do. It was so obvious that it was from the Lord. So I wasn't shrinking back. But boy, was I intimidated. It's like, how do you paint something that's going to bring an entire nation of America to prayer? And what do you want to say? What is hope? What is hope? What does it look like? How am I going to do this? There were all these images, and I just headed off to a beach near me. It's a very scraggy little beach. It's just got a few stones. It's on a harbour. And I just said to the Lord, help me, help. And I heard him say, what does hope look like to you, Julie? Because I've not commissioned Kathy to paint this. I'm commissioning you. And that was a massive thing for me because I was desperately trying to put what Kathy said and what Kathy had dreamt. And I really felt the Lord saying, you cannot borrow, steal, or take from anybody else's dream, vision, anything. It has to come from you. What does it look like to you? And it was such a relief. So, because instantly then I knew what it was. And it was three things that had happened that week. One, the horses in London ran riot. I don't know if you know that. It was in the news. There was two horses, a black one and a white one, that had blood on it. And they ran through. It was the most unprecedented thing that had happened in London. They were royal horses and they'd thrown their riders and they ran amok through the streets of London. That's the first thing that happened. Second thing was I was asked for some reason to go to a horse show. And I never go to horse shows. I've never been asked to go to a horse show. And I'd just been to a horse show. Also, I just read out to my brother a story from World War One, which entailed the British Army being absolutely pelted by machine gun by the Germans. This is in World War One in France. And suddenly the Germans took their fire, put it to this hill that there was nothing on it apart from mist, and they machine gunned that. And then nothing happened. They stopped machine gunning, dropped all their weapons, and ran screaming. And when they British caught these Germans, they were all saying the same thing. We saw a regiment of horseback, cavalry horseback regiment didn't know that the regiment in Britain had a horse back regiment, all in white, all white horses, and the man at the forefront had a sword, hair like spun gold. We turned our machine gun onto this hill, and not one horse fell. They came in slow, steady formation. And the quote is that the man leading them was so fearsome and awesome. Terror struck every man, and they threw their weapons down. And the commanding officer said, "My men screamed like little girls and ran." And then he put his hand in his head and he said, "We've lost the war. We've lost the war." So for
Wow.
me, I was
Wow.
like,
That's a
that's
story
it.
we haven't heard.
That's it. That's what I've got to paint. Now, I've never painted a horse in my life. Um, I know that they're no renowned to be the hardest things. So I started with the horses. They look like a herd of donkeys, I've got to say, for about 2 weeks. And I spoke to a friend and she said, you know what? She was American. And she said, did you know that you cannot train a donkey to go into war, but you can train a horse? And I just felt like there was a spiritual thing going on here where I was painting the church that's not ready for battle into being ready, battle ready. That's what it felt like. And that's what part of what this painting is. It's it's the hope that lies in Jesus alone, and we have to be. He has to be our guard, our head guard. He has to be the head of our army. He has to be the inspiration for what we're fighting for what we're standing for where our hope lies. And there's a Jacob's ladder behind him. These are all angels. In front of him is the parting of the Red Sea. It's like, come out of Egypt, come back to me. And there's seven lampstands in the foreground, which represent the seven churches. And we have this storm happening. And so to cut this story short, I came to a point where I was done pretty much everything, but I had not done Jesus. And the fear of God fell on me in a good way. And I got on my face and I laid prostrate in my lounge and I said, Lord, I cannot paint you. I don't know how. It still moves me when I think about it because I just felt unworthy. It's like, how do you paint Jesus? I don't know what you look like, Lord, and I don't want to get this wrong. There's so much that could go wrong with it. And I said, I know I'm supposed to paint a sword in one hand and a crook in the other. Tell me what they mean now. And he said, the crook represents my mercy. It represents my shepherd heart, the heart that you have to find right now because you have to lie down in green pastures with me. I will give you your water by still waters, and I will give you food by green pastures. And you have to find my shepherd's heart because it's what's going to give you the joy to go into what you have to face. And my sword is my judgment, but both of them, he has a heart on his chest, and both of them are coming from a place of love. So it's all about his heart, and there's a flame in his heart, and there's a flame in the lampstands. And I said to the Lord, how many of these lampstands do I light? Because in Revelation, the seven, not all of them are doing that great. The Laodicean is doing particularly bad. And and he said, light them all, because that's where my heart is. I want them all lit.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
got up off the floor and I was shaking. And I thought, oh, darn it, I've had too much coffee.
Love
And
that.
I went into my studio and the shaking didn't go, it increased. And I got up and I picked up a tiny brush and I was literally like this. And I went to do the heart because I knew the heart was in his chest. That had to be in relation to the horse's head. And he's kind of up in the saddle. So I did the heart. And then I guessed where the face was and I started. And I'm not even joking, Kathleen. And I say this from the bottom of my heart in the most honest, profound way I can ever say. I could not stop shaking and I could not stop sobbing. And the more I sobbed, the less I could see. The more I shook, the less I could hold this brush. But his face appeared, and
Mm.
I literally just did his entire face, his entire head, his in hair, his crown, his arms, his everything. I did everything non-stop for 4 hours. I didn't take a break. I just sobbed, and it felt like, I don't know, it felt like half an hour. I didn't drink, I didn't go to the loo, and I just finished him. And it was the most, honestly, it's the most profound thing that's ever happened to me. And I knew God had answered my prayer. And when I stepped back and looked at him, because when I did his eyes, they felt like blobs, just dots. It was just like oh my gosh, here we go. Here are your eyes, blob, blob. And when I stood back and looked at him, he was looking at the lampstands, and I did not do that. It was the most profound spiritual encounter I've ever had.
Wow. Wow. Julie, I am just blown away today on how you're able to listen and be obedient to what God's calling you to do and be. It's challenging as artists today. It's challenging from being able to have people around us to support us. So many great artists have been supported by patrons outside of the art, but we don't have that today. We have
Mm.
to constantly be looking for ways of supporting ourselves. And yet you have been so obedient in being able to just paint what God calls you to paint. And certainly this painting is an example of how you are listening and painting what God is asking you to do prophetically. Some people may be asked to work in business. Some people may be asked to be a plumber or an electrician or a secretary or work on an airplane, work on, maybe if you're an artist, you're on a stage somewhere, or musician writing music. But we all have to be listening to where God has placed us in our culture, in our world today, skills and talents and abilities that He's given us, and be obedient to using those skills and talents that He's given
Mm.
us. This story is just so profound and so rich and powerful in who we are, specifically as artists who, we have to not rely on a day-to-day paycheck from someplace, but a support from the outside. And so I am just so proud of the fact that you are answering God's calling in your life and being obedient to that. It's so challenging. And I want to encourage those who are listening today that are in the arts, that are in challenging positions where you are not supported, where you feel you're all alone. God sees us. God knows who we are. He's given us our skills and talents, and He's calling us to use them in our culture and our world today. This
Mm.
particular painting shows us so beautifully of God's power and magnificence, His glory. Recently I was um, listening and to God, and the word glory, when we glorify God, really it is interpreted in the Greek as having weight. The weight of God is with us. And that is the
Mm.
glory of God that we need to exemplify in our lives and share and as artists. And so I'm so blown away, as I know God is, and so proud of the fact that you are willing to sacrifice what you've sacrificed for God's and for us as the recipients of your artistic work, to be able to see Jesus in your art. We, as I said, are a visual culture today. Want to see something. We want to see something in our screens. We want to see that art. It affects our lives as none other. And so I believe God is calling all of our artists out there, whether you're a writer, a producer, a director, a television series, other
Mhm.
artists, to use your art and to take this story, these stories that Julie Ann has shared with us today, to heart, to listen and be willing to walk in those sacrificial areas, to use your art to share who Christ is. God wants us to know him and he wants others to know him. We are, I believe, working toward those last days that Christ is putting together as none other. We see it in our nature around us. We see it in spiritually and politically that's happening around us. The puzzle pieces are coming together as never before. And God is calling us to use our skills and talents to share who He is and to glorify Him in all that we do. This has been a powerful, powerful podcast, Julie Ann. Thank you for sharing from your heart your work, your paintings, and who you are. Tell us one more time how we can get a hold of your art, see your work, and get a hold of your book, Stand in particular, and get to know you a little bit more.
Well, I'll be in DC on the 28th of this month till the 8th of May for the National Day of Prayer. You can go and see the Stand exhibition, the Stand book. This painting, you can buy prints of all of it, and it's all on my website, which is www.julieannscott.com.
Great. Love it.
Easy. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for sharing your art, your heart, and especially sharing Jesus with us today from an artistic point of view. Artists, like I said, are challenged, and we lift you up. We're cheering you on, Julianne, for
Thank you.
all of your work and what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you at Windsor Castle again
Yes.
coming up. Yeah, the 1st of June again. We'll be sharing and working together there with leaders coming from the UK and America in a event called She Leads America, She Leads UK, so that we can come together and be united as sisters in the world from all areas, whether it be political areas, spiritual areas, media, entertainment areas, um, educational areas. We're going to be doing a gathering of women there, and I know God is calling us for this time as we remember Esther's words, for such a time as this. There's
Amen.
never been a time like now. And
Mm.
I am leaving a challenge out to all that is watching today, a challenge to you, the watchers and listeners right now, to use your skills and talents to what God is calling you to do, to seek Him prophetically on your knees, as Julie shared, she did, so that you can produce art that is going to change our culture and change what we see in our screens for the
Mm.
benefit of God's kingdom purposes. His will be done on this earth. Thanks for joining us today for the Influence Women podcast. You can get more information and learn more about Influence Women at influencewomen.org. Join us at one of our live events, for one of our online webinars, or for the next Influence Women podcast. You don't want to miss these, as they will challenge and inspire your life both. Join us, leave a comment, and like us. And we will see you next time for the Influence Women podcast.